I no longer remember the exact moment the accident happened. A hazy blur replaced the last image of the asphalt road. The white pickup truck speeding toward me from the opposite lane. And then a thunderous crash like a midday storm. When I woke up, everything around me was white. The smell of antiseptic stung my nose. I blinked a few times to make sure I wasn't dead. The first sensation was pain. So much pain I wanted to black out again. "Ben?" A gentle female voice called out. "If you can hear me, blink twice." I blinked. That voice sighed in relief. "You're at Mercy Hospital. You were in a serious accident, but you're stable. Don't try to move, your pelvis is fractured and you have a spinal injury. But the good news is you're alive and we're going to do everything we can." Alive. I was still alive. The next 3 days passed in a haze of painkillers and the steady beeping of machines. I vaguely heard someone had come to visit, a nurse said a relative stopped by. But I didn't see anyone. Not until the 4th day, when I was more alert, and my mother walked into the room with an expression that wasn't quite emotional, more like awkward. "Oh, you're finally awake," she said, placing a hand on the bed but not on me. "You really scared us." I looked at her, my throat dry. I tried to mouth a word. No sound. "No need to speak," my mother interrupted, then pulled a chair over and sat down. "Your father couldn't make it today, he's working. Your sister Julie is busy studying for finals. But I need to talk to you about something important." I nodded slightly. "The insurance company said your disability settlement could reach $180,000, she said bluntly. "You know, Julie has been under a lot of stress with school. She's never had a chance to travel. And she really needs a break. Somewhere like the Maldives. A once-in-a-lifetime trip."
Ich zerrte her.
"We're family, Ben," she went on. "You don't need all that money just for yourself. I know you love your sister. If you transfer most of it to me, I'll take care of Julie's trip. You'll still have some left." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had just survived a near-death accident. I was bedridden. And the first thing my mother thought of was a beach vacation for Julie? I tried to say no, but it wasn't strong enough. My eyes welled up, not from the pain but from the sheer disappointment. When I didn't respond the way she expected, my mother stood up. "You're being selfish," she said coldly. "You should think about your sister for once. She's been through enough. You're lying here, and everyone else is struggling to help you. And yet..." She didn't finish her sentence, just clutched her purse and walked out, without looking back. That night I lay still in my hospital bed, silent tears sliding down my cheeks. I had never felt so alone. The people I thought would always be there for me, my family, turned out to see me as nothing more than a wallet. I thought back to my childhood. As the oldest, I was always the one helping mom with chores, babysitting Julie, giving up outings so she could pick the cartoon. When I got a part-time job in college, I used the money to buy her a computer. Whenever she needed anything, I was there. And now I was injured, unable to walk, and they just wanted me to stay quiet and sign away my rights. That evening, a kind elderly nurse named Clarice came in. She cleaned me up, changed my bandages, and asked gently, "Any more family visiting soon, Ben?" I stayed silent. Clarice gave me a look full of empathy. "If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." I managed a weak smile. In that silence, I decided to call Ava, an old college friend, now a lawyer specializing in disability rights. I asked Clarice to help dial the number. Ava picked up right away. After hearing what I'd been through, she said firmly, "Ben, don't sign anything. I'll be there first thing in the morning. From now on, I'm your legal representative." The next morning, Ava showed up in a light gray suit and carrying her familiar laptop. She looked at me for a long moment before saying, "You're stronger than anyone I know." I smiled, "My first since the accident." "I'll make sure no one takes a single cent from you," Ava said with certainty. "But we need a long-term plan. I want you to think about writing a will, not out of pessimism, but to protect yourself." I nodded. For the first time in my life, I understood this. Sometimes betrayal comes from where we trust the most, but also from a place that seems the weakest. Like a patient's hospital room, strength can be born beyond imagination. I used to think the worst was over when I woke up after the accident. But I was wrong. Death isn't as terrifying as being treated like a bargaining chip by your own family. That day, after Ava came and had me sign a few power of attorney documents, I felt a bit more at ease. Even though I couldn't sit up, I knew every step I was taking was the right one. But I had no idea that what came next would be so much worse. 3 days later, my mother returned.
No flowers. No fruit.
No asking how I was. Just a stack of documents neatly clipped in a plastic folder. Your father had someone prepare these, she said. All you need to do is sign, and Julie's spring break trip can happen on time. If you sign quickly, I won't need to involve a lawyer. I said nothing. My gaze was cold. She placed the papers on the table, picked up her phone, and added quickly, "If you don't sign, you'll let everyone down. Julie's waiting. She won't be happy if her own brother turns out to be so selfish." I turned my face away. "Go home," I whispered. "I'm not signing." This time she didn't raise her voice. Didn't scold. She only said one sentence I'll never forget for the rest of my life. "Then don't ever call us family again." She walked out of the room, leaving the cold file on the bedside table like a divorce paper between blood ties. I thought maybe after that they would calm down. But just 2 days later, Ava showed up with a grim expression. She sat down, opened her laptop, and placed an envelope on the table. "Ben, there's something you need to know," she began. "Your family just filed a petition with the court seeking to have you declared legally incapacitated, so they can obtain guardianship and full control of your financial affairs." I was stunned. Ava looked me straight in the eyes. "They're claiming you're bedridden, unable to care for yourself, showing signs of post-traumatic confusion. They want control over your settlement." I clenched my fists, my knuckles turning white. "It's okay," Ava continued. "We'll contest it. And if needed, I'll request an independent psychological evaluation to prove you're fully competent. But Ben, this isn't about money anymore. This is about them trying to strip you of your right to be a person." I swallowed hard. "What do you need me to do?" I asked. "Trust me," Ava said, "and don't soften if they come back with crocodile tears." I nodded. It wouldn't be easy, but this time I wouldn't back down. The following days passed in eerie silence. No one came to visit. Not a single phone call. I finally understood what it meant to be cut off by your own blood. My sister Julie, the one who used to call me the hero of her life, was silent too. I texted her. "Julie, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just protecting what's left of myself. You might not understand, but I hope you don't hate me." No reply. 2 days later, Ava returned to the hospital looking different. "We have a problem but also an opportunity," she said, opening her iPad. "I just got a financial report from a contact at the bank. There was a suspicious transaction. A $25,000 payment from your father's account to a travel company in Florida 3 days before they came here asking you to sign." I frowned. "They booked the trip before even asking me?" Ava nodded. "Not just booked, they already paid most of it." The feeling of being used didn't even begin to describe what I felt. They didn't just count every cent of my settlement. They treated my decision like something they had already written off. Ava continued. "I've contacted the legal department of the travel agency to request a copy of the contract. If it names your father as the payer, we can use it as evidence of unethical behavior." I looked at her, my lips trembling. "Do they really think I'm that weak?" "It's not that you're weak," Ava replied. "They just didn't expect you to have someone backing you this time." That night, I received a message from an unknown number. "Ben, this is Elise. I used to be a friend of your mother's. I heard some things and I think you should know the truth." "Elise?" I searched my memory, faint images. A woman who used to visit when I was a kid, then disappeared. The next message came with an audio file. Ava warned me. "Recordings like this aren't admissible in court without consent, but they can help guide our investigation." I hit play. My mother's voice rang out sharp, cold. "He's lying there like a corpse, yet he still clings to that money. If we don't get him declared incapacitated, we'll never get it. You know the law. Julie needs to leave next month. We need to wrap this up." The second voice murmured something I couldn't make it out. Then my mother laughed, low and bitter. "Even if he's alive, he's worthless. People aren't just alive because they breathe. It's about what they bring to the table. And he has nothing left to give." I let the phone fall. This time it wasn't tears, it was pure emptiness. Clarice's older nurse walked in just as I sat there, hollow. "You need your meds," she said gently. I didn't respond. She looked at me for a long time, then softly placed a hand on my shoulder. "You are not a burden. Don't let anyone make you believe that." I whispered, "How do you know?" "Because I was once lying here like you. And my own relatives drained what little I had, then disappeared." I looked up at Clarice. She just gave a sad smile. "But I'm still here. And I rebuilt my life in a way no one expected." In that moment I understood. I would fight not just to keep the money but to keep my dignity. Ava returned to the hospital on Tuesday morning with a calm expression, but I could see in her eyes that something was about to change. She placed a document bag on the table beside my bed, then sat down gently, as if about to deliver bad news. "The court has accepted your parents' guardianship petition. The hearing is scheduled for next week," Ava said, her voice steady. I wasn't surprised. I simply nodded silently. "But we're not going to let them get away with it," Ava continued, her eyes shining with determination. "I've filed an official response. At the same time, I've requested an independent medical evaluation by a neurologist and a psychologist, both of whom have experience working on human rights cases." I asked, "What about the travel payment evidence?" Ava smiled. "That's exactly why I'm here today." She pulled out a copy of the bank transfer receipt. It showed my father's full name, with an electronic signature and a transaction date 3 days before they brought the papers demanding my signature. I also received the contract from the travel agency. It states a gift for daughter's 21st birthday and includes an email from your mother, saying, "Once the insurance money comes in, we'll reimburse." I let out a bitter laugh. They didn't even have the money yet, but they spent it as if they were guaranteed to win. Ava raised an eyebrow. "They've built an entire financial plan around your suffering. But that's exactly what gives us a critical opening." That afternoon, I received an unexpected call from my sister Julie. I hesitated before answering. "Hey," Julie's voice came softly. "They're saying you're making a big deal, that you're not in control anymore." I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply. "Julie, I'm completely aware. And I can't believe you believe that story too." There was a pause on the other end. "I just wanted to take a little trip," Julie continued, her voice childlike, "like when we were younger. I've been so stressed with school, and Mom said you wouldn't need all that money." I swallowed hard. "Julie, I don't blame you for needing a break. But how do you think it feels for me, the one who nearly died, to be pressured into giving up everything so you can relax?" Another pause. Then Julie sighed. "I didn't think it would go this far. I was just listening to Mom and Dad." "That's the problem, Julie. They're not always right." Julie hung up without saying goodbye. I knew that might push her further away, but I had no other choice. I had to draw a line, not just with my parents, but with someone I once loved deeply. The next day, Ava returned with new information. "We're filing for a temporary freeze on all assets related to the settlement, including any secondary accounts opened by your family." I asked, "So they won't be able to use any of the money without a legal ruling?" Ava nodded. "Exactly. And there's more." She laid down a financial extract. It showed a secondary account in my mother's name, already receiving nearly $10,000 from an unclear source, just days after I was hospitalized. Ava said, "I suspect they've siphoned part of a provisional insurance payout into a private account. If we confirm this, we can seek civil and potentially even criminal liability for embezzlement." I sat in silence for a few seconds. This was no longer a family matter, it had become a serious legal battle. "Are you ready?" Ava asked. I looked at her, my voice hoarse but firm. "I'm ready." They chose this path. That weekend, Ava arranged an online meeting with a court representative, and on the other side, my parents joined with their attorney. The screen turned on. My father's face appeared first rigid, expressionless. My mother sat beside him, her eyes cold, as if I were the traitor. Ava began in a composed tone. "We've submitted documentation confirming that my client Benjamin Lawton has full financial awareness and stable mental health, as verified by 2 independent specialists. Furthermore, we have evidence that the petitioners attempted to exploit his medical condition for financial gain." My father interrupted. We only want what's best for him. Ava smirked. By spending his money before getting his consent? My mother snapped, her voice sharp. He's our son. We have the right to make decisions if he can't care for himself. Ava pressed the button to play the audio Elise had sent. If we don't get him declared incapacitated, we'll never get the money. Silence filled the virtual room. My mother's face turned pale. My father clenched his jaw. Ava concluded. If necessary, we're prepared to file a civil lawsuit for violating personal rights, financial deception, and abusing familial trust for personal gain. The judge scheduled the formal hearing within 7 days. But even during the preliminary session, he ordered immediate suspension of all financial activity involving the settlement account. Both parties prohibited from contact outside legal representatives. Case file transferred to the state's Financial Fraud Investigation Agency. After the call ended, I looked at Ava and said hoarsely, "They didn't expect me to fight back, did they?" She smiled faintly. No one expects someone bedridden to stand up legally. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, where the dim glow of the overhead light cast a haze like an old dream. I remembered when I was a kid after a bike crash, my mom was the first to hold me. When I lost my scholarship senior year, it was Dad who wrote me an encouraging email. And now they saw me as an ATM. But I finally understood something. Family without the foundation of respect is just a shell. An IAT last had started to peel that shell away. The next morning I received a message from Elise. This time it wasn't a recording, it was a request to meet. If you want to know the whole reason why things turned out this way, let me see you. But it has to be somewhere quiet. I don't want to be followed. I hesitated. Elise was a stranger, even if she claimed to be my mother's former best friend. But something in me stirred, like fragments of memory waiting to be pieced together. I asked Ava to arrange a meeting in the hospital garden where there were security cameras and staff nearby. After all, I wasn't exactly in a position to protect myself. That afternoon Elise arrived. A woman in her 60s with neatly cropped silver hair, wearing a long ash-gray coat, and eyes both weathered and resolute. She sat on the bench beside my bed and didn't waste time. You have the right to know the truth. Your mother wasn't always like this. I said nothing, my hand resting on the thin blanket. Eliza, your mother used to be a dreamer. She loved the arts, once studied ballet, dreamed of opening her own studio. But then she met your father. Elise sighed. He was smart, ambitious, and very controlling. Before long, Eliza gave up all artistic pursuits. She started living by a set plan. Perfect wife, devoted mother. A woman who was never allowed to fail. I swallowed. Elise went on. When you were little, Eliza once wanted to take you to an art class. But your father forbade it. He said, drawing won't help the boy become a doctor. Gradually, she boxed herself into the role of Ben's mother, Stephen's wife. And when Julie was born, her only daughter, pretty like a doll, she poured all her old dreams into her. I remembered the times Mom forced Julie to learn ballet, piano, French, while I was drilled with advanced math since I was 10. Eliza began to confuse love with sacrifice. But that kind of love becomes twisted when it's no longer freely given. She began to believe that having power over her children was the only way not to be left behind. Elise looked directly into my eyes. And then came your accident. She couldn't accept that someone dependent now held the bigger sum of money, got more attention. That's why she turned against you to take the power back. I was speechless. Why are you helping me? I finally asked. Elise's voice was slow and low. Because I used to be Eliza. I lost myself in a wrong marriage, tried to keep control by manipulating my own children. But when I lost my son to depression, I realized no one wins in a family ruled by control. Only shattered people remain. That night I couldn't sleep. Memories I thought long buried floated back. The day I won my first full scholarship, Mom only asked, "Why was your math grade so low?" The day I failed a job interview, Dad said, "Because you weren't decisive enough." The day Julie got into college, the family threw a party while on the day I was hospitalized. They asked if I had brought my insurance card. I used to think if I tried harder, I'd earn their recognition. But now I understood. Some people don't seek love, they seek control. And I'd lived inside that circle far too long. The next day, Ava walked into my room with a rare smile. I just got the temporary court order. All accounts linked to you have been frozen pending investigation. And more importantly, she held up a fax. The insurance company is cooperating to find out who really received the funds. I frowned. What do you mean? Ava lowered her voice. A portion of the advance $10,000 was withdrawn from an account your mother opened under the name Recovery Fund. But in reality, the money was used to book a yacht in Miami. I smirked bitterly. A yacht. A yacht. And a birthday party for Julie with over 40 guests, booked at a beach resort. They were preparing to withdraw the rest when the freeze hit. My anger wasn't fiery anymore. It had turned cold, ice cold. Cold and clear. They don't love me anymore, I said. Maybe they never truly did, they just loved the useful version of me I used to be. Ava placed a hand on my shoulder. Ben, being betrayed doesn't define who you are. It's how you rise even from a hospital bed that shows the world who you are. A week later, I received a handwritten letter from Julie. The handwriting was rushed, ink smudged, as if written in a haze of confusion.
Ben.
I don't know what to say. Everyone at home is panicking. Mom cries all day. Dad's yelling into phones nonstop. I feel lost. But mostly I feel ashamed. I let myself become an extension of them. I thought Ben will understand, but I never tried to understand you.
I'm sorry.
If you never want to see me again, I get it. But if you're willing, I want to become a sister you can be proud of. Julie. I read it over and over again. It hurt, but it was real. At least she wasn't hiding. I didn't reply right away. But I tucked the letter into the drawer. Because in this pile of ashes, maybe, just maybe, there's still a tiny light I'm not ready to extinguish. The formal hearing took place on a foggy Wednesday morning, in a small conference room inside the county courthouse. I was transported by medical van, seated in a wheelchair, with Ava beside me. Though my body was still weak, I had never felt more mentally clear. Across from me, my parents sat in silence, their faces tense. My mother wore a dark blue dress, her lips tightly pressed. My father shook hands with his attorney, then looked away when he saw me enter. Julie wasn't present. The judge was a stern-looking older woman with a gaze that seemed to pierce through any facade. Ava began. Your Honor, my client Benjamin Latoni's a legal adult with full mental capacity. His parents' attempt to gain guardianship is not based on medical necessity, but rather a deliberate effort to control his finances. We have evidence of questionable financial transactions and signs of potential fraud. Their lawyer objected. The family is simply concerned about his well-being. No one is trying to take advantage. Ava remained calm. Then we asked the court to review the following evidence. A series of documents were projected on the screen. The travel contract, birthday party invoices, photos from a resort's Facebook page, all proof that an extravagant plan had already been carried out, while I was still bedridden. But the moment that changed everything came when Ava played the recording Elise had provided. My mother's voice echoed clearly through the courtroom. He's useless alive. We have to make him legally incompetent. No one spoke. The judge frowned. My father froze, awkwardly adjusting his tie. My mother turned pale, her lips trembling. Ava concluded. We request that the guardianship petition be dismissed, a temporary freeze be placed on all related assets, and that the case be forwarded to the Financial Fraud Investigation Division. The judge nodded slowly. The hearing will resume next week. However, I hereby issue a temporary order. All insurance funds are to be held in an independent trust account, and the parents are barred from access. Furthermore, the case will be forwarded to the district attorney's office for possible criminal charges. A complete turning of the tide. That afternoon, I lay in my hospital room, thinking of nothing but the judge's words replaying in my mind. Barred from access. It wasn't exactly satisfaction, I felt it was relief. Like breathing fully for the first time without bracing for pain. Ava walked in holding her phone. Ben, are you sitting steady? She asked, a strange glint in her eye. I nodded. Then you need to hear this. It's the insurance company director. And you'll want to hear it for yourself. She put it on speaker. Hello, Mr. Lawton. A clear male voice rang out. This is Gerald Creighton, Director of Claims at North Life Insurance. We've just completed an internal review and found something noteworthy. You are listed as the beneficiary of a trust not only from your accident settlement, but also from a legacy investment by your late grandmother valued at $860,000. I was stunned. That amount was triggered by severe accident or long-term disability. Previously, the documentation had been withheld by your parents, but we have verified that the beneficiary listed is solely you. I turned to Ava. She was smiling a victorious smile. We will arrange to transfer the trust to an independent fiduciary service if you approve, the man continued. Full details will be sent to your email. The call ended. Ava raised an eyebrow. They thought you only had the initial insurance money. But they forgot one thing: the powerless one wasn't you. Their greed blinded them. I sat in silence. Nearly $1 million. It wasn't about the money, it was the truth. The reversal of power. Proof that I was not the helpless victim they thought I was. That evening my mother called. I let it ring twice before picking up. Ben, her voice was raspy. I didn't know about that, the investment. I didn't know it was still active. I said nothing. Can I explain? Explain how you planned to take my money while I was lying paralyzed? It wasn't like that, I cut in. You told me if I didn't sign not to call you family again. Remember? Silence. I continued. Then rest assured. Since that day, I've known exactly who I am in this family. I hung up.
No yelling.
No crying. No shaking. Just closure. The next morning Julie texted. I found out everything. I'm in shock. I had no idea about that trust. I understand if you never forgive me. But if one day you let me visit you not as a beneficiary, but just as your sister, I'd be grateful. I read that message 3 times. And I didn't delete it. Because maybe, just maybe, someone still wants to step out of the cycle with me. Clarice came into the room like she did every day. She fluffed my pillow, handed me my meds, then said, "You know, when you first came in, your eyes looked like someone waiting to be rescued. Now you're different. I'm still in a wheelchair, Clarice. But your mind has stood up." I turned to the window. The spring sunlight streamed in softer, warmer than before. I didn't need anyone to save me anymore. All I needed was myself and a lawyer named Ava, a friend named Elise, a nurse named Claricine, a heart strong enough not to die while still alive. 2 months after the final hearing, everything inside me felt like it was only just beginning. I was no longer bedridden. I could sit up on my own, move with a self-propelled wheelchair, and had begun intensive physical therapy. Every movement hurt, but it was no longer the pain of helplessness. It was pain that meant I was coming back to life. My lawyer remained by my side more as a friend than a legal representative. She never pitied me. And that, more than anything, made me deeply grateful. Elise visited every Sunday afternoon, bringing art books, soft cookies, and the quiet wisdom of someone who once got lost and had found her way back to being human. While I was rebuilding my body, I also began rebuilding my spirit through writing. At first just a few lines in a journal, then pages upon pages describing the feeling of being left behind, being diminished, and finally the feeling of reclaiming the right to be myself. A local nonprofit for disability rights, who had heard my story through Ava, invited me to speak at their inspiration program. I initially declined out of fear. But Ava said something I never forgot. You don't have to stand to tell a story of victory. You just have to tell the truth. At my first speech, I sat in a wheelchair before an audience of people who had been broken in different ways. Accidents, abuse, abandonment, or simply being overlooked. I began with one sentence. My family said I was selfish for not letting them use my compensation money to go on vacation. They said I didn't deserve to keep anything since I couldn't walk anymore. But then I walked away from them, away from control. I didn't just walk, I ran. With my mind, my will, and my self-worth. The room erupted in applause. For the first time in my life, I didn't need to try to be accepted. I just needed to show Upus myself. One summer afternoon Julie came. Unannounced. She walked into the rehab center where I was practicing walking with crutches, her hair tied neatly back, holding a brown paper bag. "Do you have a moment?" she asked softly, no longer the pampered little sister I once knew. I nodded. We sat on a small bench outside. where the sunlight fell gently on the stone tiles. Julie handed me the bag. Inside was a stack of colored pencil drawings, childhood moments. Me helping her ride a bike, hugging her on her first day of school, standing quietly behind the fence at her graduation. Things I thought she had forgotten. "I didn't come to apologize," she said, her voice trembling, "because I know an apology isn't enough. I just wanted you to know I see you. I see what you did, what you gave up. I'm no longer the child who needs protection. I want to start again, not as family, but as someone learning how to become human." I looked at her, my throat tight. A part of me was still wounded, but another part knew she had stepped out of the family's shadow, just as I once had. "We don't have to forgive right away, Julie," I said. "But if you want to walk with me, go slow. I'm still learning how to walk." She smiled, eyes brimming with tears. "I'm a pretty good walker. I'll wait." 1 year after the accident, I opened my own business. It wasn't big, but it was built entirely from my experience. Adaptive interior design for people with disabilities. I called it Second Step, because for me the first step was the fall and the second was the choice to stay down or to rise. I hired people once labeled as incompetent, a girl with one arm who drew blueprints with her foot, a blind guy who mapped spaces with 3D models, a single mom with a prosthetic leg who was an absolute genius at assembly. We weren't a company. We were a new kind of family. As for my parents, they disappeared from my life after the guardianship was denied, and the criminal investigation was passed to the state level. I never followed up on the outcome. I didn't wish for their regret or their punishment. I only wished for them to be gone so I could live. I still keep an old photo of me, Julie, my mom and dad laughing hard on our last family camping trip. Not because I want to remember them, but to remind myself, some people aren't bad from the beginning. They just lose themselves when they forget what enough looks like. Every time I look down at the scar on my leg, I no longer see loss. I see the path of a journey I've survived. A journey where someone once called me a burden, but now I know the truth. I was never carrying anyone. I was simply living true to myself and true to the values I chose to keep, no matter the cost. If you're lying in a hospital bed, or stuck in a toxic relationship, or even just made to question your own worth, please remember this. You are not selfish for protecting yourself. You are not broken for saying no to what's wrong. You are not alone when you still believe in yourself. And you, even if you've fallen, still have the right to choose your second step.